Hi guys, today's video is going to be a comparison and review of 3 Maybelline foundations, and they're all from the Dream line. 2 of them I've had for a while. This is the Dream Satin Liquid, which has been out for ever. This is one of my first foundations that I used to wear some time ago, let's say at least 12 years ago. I started wearing this, I think probably longer than that. So I've had a lot of experience with this one. Then we've also got the Dream Flawless Nude, which is slightly newer. I think I talked about this, I've used it in a Get Ready With Me not that long ago, but I feel like this is newer, maybe 6 months to a year old, possibly older than that, but I've only had it quite recently. And then the brand new one, which is the Dream Velvet, which is supposed to be soft matte but hydrating, which definitely appeals to me. I'm all about looking not oily, but I don't like the dry patches on my skin. So we shall see how this works. I am wearing it right now. No spoilers. Watch till the end to find out how I feel about this one. But the first 2 will be reviews because I've had them for a while. The third one will be more of first impressions because it's brand new to me and to the market. So hopefully it's going to be useful for those of you thinking of purchasing it. Let me know how you feel about this format because I have a few different brands that I want to do this with. And if you do want to see any specific brands, of course, let me know and I'll try to accommodate any requests that I get. I feel like it's a slightly better bite-sized way of going through a foundation collection than one monster video that's just going to be too much information all at once. This one is going to be more kind of dedicated and focused to individual foundations, which I feel is more important if you are actually really looking at these to purchase. So the first one that we're going to look at is the Dream Satin Liquid. The colour I have is Ivory, and the reason I've chosen this one first is because this is the one that I'm most familiar with. For years and years, this was my go-to foundation. I absolutely loved it, and it's the only one that I had. Pre-beauty blogger days when people just had the one foundation. So I'm going to apply this. I'm just going to apply it with my hands because that's pretty much how I apply almost every foundation or base product. It's how I'm most comfortable and it's how I find that most foundation products work best for me. So we're going to start with this one. It's kind of a light to medium coverage. You can build it up a little bit, but it's very, very silicone-y, as I find with most Maybelline foundations that I've tried. Very kind of, it has that ever so slightly greasy texture to it. Now, the idea of it being silicone-y, if you remember the adverts where it kind of went over a golf ball and looked totally smooth, is that everything would look perfect and blurred and like poreless. It would kind of float over your pores rather than sinking into them. And once upon a time, you know, when I had younger skin, I felt like this was the foundation for me. I absolutely loved it. Like I say, it was my #1. Now I've tried different ones. I'm not so sure. I still like it, but it's kind of a basic foundation for me. It doesn't do anything terrible, but I do find that it settles into some areas of pores here. Not as bad as some foundations I've tried. It's still kind of considerably better than a lot of them, but it does still settle into some. And then I have some dry areas around my nose, and it definitely settles around those as well. So it's not perfect, it's not kind of the be-all and end-all of poreless finishes, but it is a pretty good price point and I do still like this foundation. Wear time really depends on how oily you are, I find. If you're not too oily, I mean, it depends on day to day for me these days. When I was younger, I absolutely had to powder constantly with this foundation. I liked the way that it looked and I liked the finish, but I wanted that completely all matte look all the time. Whereas now, I'm slightly less oily and I'm actually kind of liking that dewy finish because it's slightly more youthful. I don't mind looking ever so slightly shiny. I don't want to look like an oil slick in my T-zone, but I don't mind a slightly dewy finish. So I don't have to powder constantly. I'd probably powder at some point throughout the day if I wore this for a full day at work. I know that air conditioning kind of wreaks havoc with foundation longevity time, but it's also something to bear in mind because obviously most of us work in an office environment or at least an environment that is air conditioned, and that's the kind of test that you want. To see whether or not something's really going to last all day. And I do find that the actual coverage lasts pretty well, but it doesn't help to control any oil. Next, we're going to talk about the Dream Flawless Nude. The colour that I have in this one is also Ivory, I think. Yes. This is a totally different kind of foundation. Before I apply it, I always shake it up because it's very, very liquidy. I always feel like something like that needs to be mixed before using it. And it is very fluid. So this is not something that you're going to apply necessarily with a brush. I mean, it depends on the individual. Like I say, I apply everything pretty much with my fingertips. Occasionally I use a beauty blender or some kind of makeup sponge if I want, I tend to use a makeup sponge if I want to kind of layer something or I want a really, really long lasting finish. Then I put a really, really thin layer on with a damp beauty blender, wait for it to totally set and then put another layer on. But it's not often that I use that, you know, it's time and I can't be bothered. So normally I use my fingertips and this is perfect for this. This is a foundation that I tend to use when I'm looking for very, very minimal coverage, but I just want a little bit of something. So let's get on to the application. to mention about this one. First and foremost, I thought that the actual applicator on the inside was plastic. I assumed it must be plastic, I don't know, for safety reasons and also for it being cheap. But apparently it's not, it's glass. And I hear through comments on my YouTube videos when I mentioned this previously that some people have actually reported tiny little cuts on their face from applying it in the way that I do. It's not really going to stop me from doing it because I do try to be careful, and now I'm aware that it's glass, obviously I'm a little bit more careful, but that's something to be aware of. It's not something that you want to be kind of like, you know, throwing around. It's not something you want to drop on tiles because it's going to smash and create a bit more of a mess than you're expecting. So that's something to bear in mind, that it is a glass little dropper on the inside. It feels amazing. When I put it on my skin, it feels completely weightless, like nothing. I don't feel like I'm wearing makeup at all now, and yet everything's evened out and looks quite nice. But a little bit like with the satin liquid, it does settle into dry areas, especially around my nose right now. I don't know if you can see that, but I have quite a few dry areas around here from our recent holiday, which was in a cold weather area, and it really doesn't look good. This is particularly bad if you do have any kind of imperfections that it might cling to. I think because it's such a thin consistency, it's not got anything to kind of to glide over those areas at all. There's nothing to it. It's just a little bit of colour. That's my water pump making noise. It just happens to be in the cupboard next to where I film now. Yeah, it's really irritating. But if you are kind of in the summertime, if your skin is pretty good, I would say this is something that I would reach for. Not necessarily in the winter months, because that is the time where I do tend to get those little areas of not so nice skin. My pores, not so bad with this one. It does settle a little bit, but again, it's all going to depend on your skin. If your skin is pretty smooth, it's pretty good condition, then you'll probably like this. But if you have things to cover, it's probably not going to be for you. Wear time, again, because it is quite a thin consistency, it doesn't last all that long, especially if I get oily throughout the day. But because of how I use this, I am just using it in kind of place of a tinted moisturiser or a BB cream, something to just even my skin out when I want a little bit of something. I don't tend to use this on a heavy duty makeup day. Then it's not really a big deal. I'm not so bothered about it kind of lasting all day. It's something that at the same time that I would wear kind of a lip gloss or a tinted lip balm, and I don't mind it wearing away throughout the day, this is the kind of foundation product that I would use on those days as well. Probably just like running errands and around the house and stuff, rather than a full day at work. Excuse the get up. But number 3 is the Dream Velvet Soft Matte Hydrating Foundation. Just getting ready for the day, and this third installment is going to be slightly different. We're going to do a day test because it's the first time I'm using this foundation, so it's going to be a first impressions, and then I'm going to take you along with me today and we're going to see how this foundation kind of performs. The colour again that I have in this one is Ivory, and I have high hopes for this. I used to absolutely love the Dream Matte Mousse that was in the tub. I don't know, do they still make that? I don't know. But I kind of think that this may be their new version, but in kind of liquid form. So we shall see. Very, very thick, much thicker than the others that I was showing you. But yeah, I don't have a mirror in front of me, so I'm gonna just have to use this viewfinder and hope for the best. If it's not entirely blended in straight away, that's why. It's very heavy, but it doesn't feel dry. It's, I don't know, creamy still. I may have applied too much. First impressions are really, really good. It feels really fresh, much nicer to touch actually than any of the other foundations. It didn't feel silicone-y at all. It actually felt like you had to work pretty quickly with it or it's going to set. But it's left my face feeling almost cool, which is strange. It does say that it's hydrating, so I have high hopes for that as well. But I think part of the whole hydrating thing, I mean, it was very thick, so I was worried about where it might settle, but it hasn't settled anywhere. All around here, with all the other foundations, I saw dry areas, and I don't know if you can see, close up on my nose and all, but it's really just kind of smoothed that over. So I have the rest of my makeup on now. I've got some concealer and some powder, which is still a fair test because it's the same way that I would test the longevity of any other foundation. So kind of just bear that in mind throughout the day. There are other things on my face, but I will kind of give you my thoughts with that in consideration at the end of the day as to how I feel like this lasted. Already I'm really impressed with it. I really like the way that it feels on my skin. I like the finish. I like the way that it kind of behaves with the things that I've used on my face. It hasn't kind of slipped around or kind of broken down when I've used other things, which seems strange, but some products do. So far I'm really, really enjoying it compared to a lot of the products that I've used that are more expensive as well. It kind of reminds me of Double Wear in the way that it feels on my skin and the way that it sets. So I'm really hopeful that it will actually behave in the same way as double wear. We will see, but I will come back to you in a little while. It's the beginning of the day right now. We're going to go out for the day, and I'll come back to you kind of vlog style with some updates as we go along. So far, the foundation is definitely, I feel like it's actually a little bit heavy, and I think that's probably my fault. I feel like I've applied too much of it because I didn't understand how well it was going to blend out or anything, but here it definitely feels almost a little bit cakey, like too much foundation. But like I say, I feel like that's like user error. But I'm definitely getting a little bit glowy, a little bit shiny around this area. I am just about to get my brows tinted and waxed, so all this up here will not really be something that we can look at the end of the day because it's not going to be the same thing. But this area I'm not going to powder or anything, and we'll see how well it lasts throughout the day. It's been about 2 hours that I've had it on so far, and I don't feel like I have to powder, but I feel like much longer and I would do. I'm going to be super bright right now because I've come upstairs to stand in front, or sit in front of my light box, which is in a cupboard. Odd kind of filming situation, but it's dark outside now because I've left it kind of long enough for me to think that this is a good full day's test for the foundation. I would say that overall the coverage has stayed pretty well, but as you can see, quite shiny. I mean, these areas I have actual like oil. That's not just shiny, that's like oil, and I'm oilier for sure with it on than without. So if I had kind of no foundation on for the day, I definitely wouldn't be as oily as this. That being said, it's been a really hardcore day test for this foundation. I went and had my eyebrows waxed, which is a pretty stressful experience. Any kind of waxing is a little bit painful, so there is that to be said for it. And I do like the coverage. Chances are I wouldn't go an entire day, especially if I was out and about and doing things, I wouldn't go an entire day without powdering my foundation. So I would have powdered, and had it not been for the shine, I wouldn't have had anything bad to say about this at all. I think this is really nice. I probably would have just done kind of T-zone and chin and been absolutely fine. But as it is, I've left it totally to its own devices, and that's pretty much the worst that I can say about it. I like it. I would probably have applied a little bit less in hindsight. Now I know kind of how opaque it was and how heavy duty it was. It did feel heavier than I felt like it needed to, and I didn't need as much coverage as I was applying. I definitely don't normally apply anything kind of as dense as that as a foundation. That's more of a kind of concealer, knock out everything kind of coverage, isn't it? So that's something I would say to bear in mind as well. Use a real small amount and kind of build it up rather than going straight in there for the amount that maybe you think you would use, like I did. But overall, I really, really like it. I do tend to like the Maybelline foundations. I know I've given some of them a hard time over this video. I can't just tell you, oh, I love this, I love this, I love this, because it all really depends on you, your expectations, and what you want from a foundation. Each of these are great in their own way, but they're each not so great in their own way as well. It all depends on your expectations for that particular product and what you want it to do for you. All of them I will keep, all of them I will continue to use different occasions for different reasons. But I think this third one, this new velvet version, will probably be something that I would use on a more regular basis because it is slightly higher coverage, slightly longer wearing. It just needs to be topped up throughout the day, powder-wise. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to go and subscribe if you want to see more from me. I also have other channels which are all linked in the info bar below. But yeah, for now, I'll say goodbye. Bye.